Hello, my name is Brian Friedland, and welcome to another episode of Inside the GSC. Today I'm interviewing Alabama Huntsville men's basketball senior guard Tommy Murr. Tommy is an all GSC athlete who has made CSC Academic All District and currently leads UAH in scoring. He will talk about his journey to Huntsville, UAH's historic season, and more. Alright, so on another episode of Inside the GSC, today I'm joined by a special guest, Alabama Huntsville men's basketball senior guard Tommy Murr. Tommy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yep. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So we'll get going into this one. So obviously you're in the midst of the season right now, so just wanted to reach out and see how's your season been going so far. I know we're getting closer to the conference tournament, so certainly exciting times ahead.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, we've been very fortunate. We've had some bounces go our way, and God's allowed us to be healthy and have a good season so far. So we're looking forward to what's to come, and um, uh, happy with how things have gone, but not content. Obviously we're focused on winning a championship, and that's what we're building towards. So we've been very fortunate, but got to keep getting better.
For sure, for sure. That's a great mentality to have. So we'll start digging in, start diving into a little bit of your background. So I was just wondering, how'd you get into basketball in the first place? And did you always know that you wanted to play at the collegiate level, or was it just kind of something that you started playing and you were like, let's see how far this goes?
It was certainly always a dream of mine. I didn't know how realistic it was until I got a little bit older, and I was given a lot of really good opportunities and was very fortunate. My dad, all four of his brothers, their dad, both my sisters are well have played college basketball. My younger one's still playing, so long line of basketball tradition in our family. And when I was born, my parents decided that they weren't going to force me into it. I think that's an issue you see a lot in most sports today. Is parents kind of want it more than the kids do, and they get burned out. And so because they allowed me to develop a natural love for it, I really fell in love with it for myself, and I wanted to get better. I enjoyed the process, and early on, you're not really thinking about what's to come and what it might result in. You're just enjoying the game, and it's funny because when you get older, you wish you could almost remember some of that same simplicity and that same joy that you had, that same happiness, and you gotta remind yourself why you started playing in the first place. So it's always been a dream. So it's been a great honor to get to do it here.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, you touched on a very important part too, where it's just like you have to remember that it's all for you at the end of the day. So that's great. That's great that your parents didn't force you into it or anything like that. So, and then speaking of your family, I know that you get to play for your dad back in high school at Lindsay Lane Christian Academy. So, can you touch on that a little bit? And what was that experience like for you? And did he try to instill any lessons in you? Like, was it kind of like the Coach Carter dynamic? I may be outdating myself with that reference, but was it kind of like no special treatment, even if it's my son? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if it was quite as cornball as the movie is, but it was certainly just such a unique experience and season of my life. And I got married this past May, and he was my best man. He's my best friend. So getting to do a lot of the really cool things I got to do in high school alongside him was really special. As a father-son duo, but also as he's one of my best friends. So that was an honor, and I learned so much from him. And like I said, he introduced me to the game, and really got me excited about it. And decided, like I said, he wasn't going to force me into it, but if I wanted to get better, then he would be a resource. And he's just been amazing, and introducing me to the game. We have a special bond over basketball, but I'd say the believer he is, the father, the husband that he is, very much served as an example to mold me into the man that I am today. So basketball is great, but what he's done for me, it far succeeds just basketball. So that was an awesome part of our lives, and we'll cherish that.
Awesome. That's awesome. And congratulations, man, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
But and then just touching into, so I know like everybody, I always like asking this because everybody's path to the top of the mountain or to college or wherever the end goal is always different. And I feel like recruiting processes are always different. So I was wondering too, like, what was your recruiting process like when you were back in high school? I know like the last 2 years, I believe you average over 44 points a game. So that must have been a really awesome process just getting to see where you would end up.
Yeah, no, it was certainly an interesting time, being recruited. And I was fortunate to hear from a good amount of schools. And I think I had maybe 4 or 5 or 6 Division I offers. I can't, recollect entirely, but I had some really good opportunities, and I narrowed it down to three. I think my top three were Lipscomb, Sanford, Troy. I think it was. Ultimately, I went where I thought, I could maximize my potential, academically, athletically, but also spiritually. I thought Coach Acuff, having strong ties to UAH and the GSC, I knew about him. I knew about his character, and I knew that he was going to value me outside of what I could do for him on the floor. And he made me also molded my character in such a major way. But recruiting it was certainly interesting being at a smaller school. And I think a lot of people do the very most to get seen. And I was playing in a very small private Christian school, and my dad has been in Christian education, pretty much his whole career, and they felt like our calling was to be at that school at the time. Um, so for me, that meant maybe not playing on the biggest stage, at least in high school. Um, but we chose to trust that God was faithful, and that if I could play, I'd be seen, and that if He wanted me to play, then I would. So it worked all out for the best, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. But it was certainly an interesting time in life, and I had a lot of really good opportunities that I was very thankful for.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I was reading up too. I think you're still the leading scorer in Alabama history. So I mean, obviously that plan worked out, you know? So
Yeah, it worked out just fine in a lot of aspects for sure.
yeah. And then just diving into your college career, I know you touched on that you were at Lipscomb first and now you're at UAH. So can you touch on a little bit what that journey to UAH was like and making that transition from Division I to Division II?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned I got married, and a few of those guys were in my wedding. And I think that's the goal that, as a high school kid, you're not thinking about when you take a visit. Are these the type of guys that I would want my wedding, and then 10 years down the road, I would want around my kids as a sort of uncle type figure? I mean, those are things that you don't quite think about, and then you're thankful for later on. So I chose Lipscomb because the spiritual aspect, just the culture of the guys. I thought it was like-minded guys that were selfless. I think um, that's a hard characteristic to find, potentially in a lot of young men our ages, and to find a collective group like I had at Lipscomb and like I now have at UH is um, it's been vital, to my character development and success on the floor. But uh, I chose after 3 years to just pursue what I thought would give me the best chance to maximize my potential. And I think kind of the end goal of wanting to potentially play professionally for a year or two at least, I felt like it was time for a new opportunity. And being from Athens, which is 30 minutes away, 25 minutes away from Huntsville, it made a lot of sense. And the tradition, the character of the guys, the culture, it was really kind of a no-brainer, and it worked out well. I had some personal connections here already, so the transition was really just seamless. I mean, I played pickup with a lot of the guys at UAH during the off seasons because, frankly, there wasn't a lot of like just high IQ pickup going on in the area. And I thought, if I'm going to play, this is the place. And I went, and those guys challenged me. I mean, guys that were all Americans, guys that were all league guys that I was playing against as a freshman and a sophomore, and even my senior year of high school, Josh Majette and those guys. Uh, they really just made it so easy for me to come in, make me feel comfortable along with the teammates I had, and give me that confidence back to play free and find that joy that I had for the game again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then, so has Division II basketball differed at all from Division I, or have you noticed a lot of similarities between the two?
I always think that the guards are stronger, the wings are a little bit longer, and the bigs are a little bit taller. And I
Okay.
think outside of that, the skill, the IQ behind the game, the shot making in a lot of ways, the flow of the game, the speed, I don't think they really differ in much of any way. It's funny, I mentioned Coach Acuff, who had great success here at UH, and really laid the basis for a lot of success we're able to have today. But when I was at Lipscomb, he would always say when we would play a team from a different division, now y'all know, boys, there's elite players at every level. And I think, okay, yeah, I think there are, because it's kind of ironic. I think there's a lot of guys D1 that maybe shouldn't be, and there's guys in D3 and D2 that could really, really do well and thrive in a D1 team. So it's funny, like you mentioned, recruiting and opportunity and exposure, how that, a lot of guys just fall through the cracks. I mean, there's so much talent. So I'd say like the size is really the only biggest difference. But really, really talented and elite players at every division, obviously.
For sure, for sure. And that's such an important point too. Like when I was going to basketball camps when I was younger. Now, I was not the basketball player that clearly you are. I was a wide ball guy, so I would just chucking up threes. But but I digress. I digress. But either way, going to basketball camps growing up, like that was a misconception that they really wanted us to know was everybody can play. If you're playing collegiately, you can play. Like it doesn't really matter. You can play. If you're able to get a scholarship or what be able to have that opportunity, you can play. So that's a really big part, I feel like, is just knowing that everybody there is talented. It doesn't really matter what the division is, what the name or logo is.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned like there's kind of a stigma with it, right? And mostly I think it's from people that are not educated basketball wise. I think it's just kind of a general cultural idea, but um, I think being in it, you really see it. Like you said, I kind of experienced it in high school, and people said, "Well, you better move your son to somewhere he can play on a bigger level." And they thought, "No, I think God's got this figured out. I think we're going to be all right," and it worked out just fine. So, like I said, if you can play, you're going to be seen, and like I said, there's really good players at every level.
Right. And at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. So.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And then, so also, I believe when you first started playing college ball, that was right during COVID. So, what was that experience like for you? Because I only got to experience that as a student. I can't imagine going through that as a student athlete.
Yeah, so I mean, it started when I was halfway through my senior year of high school, and they said, I think we're going to have to take a week off. And then 3 days later, they were like, yeah, you're not going back to school. So it was certainly an interesting and unique period. And um, yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, I think going straight into college, like I didn't have an off season or a summer, with my team. And normally we do, at least a month together of just team stuff and lifting and conditioning. And I've seen how important that is in years to come. But not having that was tough. And then my roommate and I both got quarantined 3, 4, 5 times. I don't know what it was. I think
Sheesh.
I had it once or twice, and then he had it. So we both got traced through that. So we missed multiple weeks, and then the day before our first game, uh, he gets it, and I get traced, and we both go home for another 2 weeks or whatever it was. And it was just like, this can't be real life. So it was just kind of like things kind of just developed like that, one thing after another, and you just thought, man, this is so bizarre, especially looking back at it. But uh, I think I learned a lot about myself and grew in a lot of ways with the time I was given there, and it certainly helped shape the years to come. And then when I was able to have success, especially here, um, being more prepared for that and having the humility to manage that and appreciate it for what it really was, because things were really difficult for a while. So it was a bizarre time for sure. And
For
it
sure.
impacted classes and basketball and school, and it was just a wild time for sure.
And I mean, when you keep that positive mindset too, like it's easy to be negative, but if you just continually are staying positive and just stay in the course, I feel like that makes it all the more easier, especially when there's so much uncertainty during that time.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to be negative when you're grateful. I think we have so
Right.
much to be grateful for in every aspect of life. But uh, I remember thinking, even past COVID, my sophomore and junior year, where I thought, man, I feel like I'm working really hard and I kind of wish I was playing more, just to be frank. Um, and my dad told me one time, he said, your worst day as a Division I college athlete on scholarship at Lipscomb would be someone's dream. Someone else would die to be in that position. Your worst day would be someone else's best day. And I think having that perspective really changed a lot for me, and thought, wow, how ungrateful am I being? And I have so much to be content with and be grateful for, and I choose to complain about the few things I don't have. So. Like I said, I think those trying times really prepared me, for the future and what I've been able to do here with my team.
For sure, for sure. And I know you spoke about your off-season training getting interrupted a little bit by the pandemic but in a normal circumstance, what is off-season training like for you? Are you staying on campus working with the team? Because I know like in other sports they go home and like they form their own little groups and are training there. So are you doing most of your work on campus or do you have to do some off-campus work as well?
It was certainly different this past summer getting married because we spent some time on a honeymoon, and
Right.
I wanted to be present and enjoy that as much as I possibly could because how special it was. But I was a little bit antsy, not gonna lie, towards the end of it, thinking, all right, I need to get back in there. So I was able to lift and condition and do all kinds of stuff like that on the honeymoon, and then getting back, it was like I was antsy, like it's time to hit the road. So um, it's I spend most time probably on campus here. I live probably just a handful of minutes away from the school, so um, I'm in the facility there with the guys, and most of our guys are local. So I mean, we're playing, voluntary pickup all the time, alumni. Like I mentioned, some of those guys, former All Americans, former first team All League, like some of them still playing pro or just finished. Like those guys will make you so much better, and that's one of the rare resources I think, especially at this level, is having guys like that around you to help you get better and to challenge you. Because I mean, when you play those guys, it's a challenge. I don't care if they finished college 5, 10 years ago, like they still understand the game and are going to push you. So it's a lot of pickup, and one of my biggest things is conditioning. Like I want to be the best conditioned guy on the floor. I think that's a skill. Yeah, I think that's a very undervalued skill, being able to play your normal self longer than the next guy. Even if you are underskilled, that makes you more valuable than the guy that has more skill, but has a shorter tank, right? So I take pride in that and staying in elite shape. But other than that, I mean, just living on the shooting gun and repetition and ball handling and finishing and um, trying not to keep myself in a box, but to be comfortable being uncomfortable, um, and being creative. I think a lot of guys have probably lost. I think sadly, due to the rush of so many personal trainers now, at least basketball wise, especially when you're younger, it's kind of stealing the creativity from those kids and forcing their minds to think. Because I remember being as a kid and still today going into an empty gym and just imagining a double team, a ball screen coverage, a pick and roll read, and like having to think through those things in your head. Like it's very valuable. But
Right.
I try to really challenge myself and stay in elite shape. We're lifting obviously in the summer. Yeah, so I try to you know maximize every chance I get and every day I get in the off season for sure.
Right. And I feel like too, just touching a little bit on the personal trainer stuff, like you see like everybody trying to emulate each other and it just kind of all morphs together. And then you see like some of the cream rises to the top, but a lot of it is just very similar to each other these days. So,
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of benefit in it. And I work with one sometimes in the summer. I split some time, obviously. But I think you need to be forced to create your own drills based off of what you understand about your own game, because nobody understands your game better than yourself. And I think when you're only working with the trainer, and I think this really refers mostly when you're younger, especially, um, all this structure of like, oh, you take two dribbles to the right, and then you do this move to the left, and then you finish with this hand off this foot. And it's like you turn to a robot when you get into a game. I think a lot
right.
of kids, and um, whereas you're watching these guys on TV, and then you're going out in the yard and you're emulating and you're trying to imagine stuff. I think that definitely has helped me a lot, and the creativity, I guess, of my game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And so you're playing under a new coach this year. And I was wondering, especially with the season you guys are having, I'm not going to jinx anything, but it's been a great season so far, no matter the end result. So, are there any lessons that you've learned from playing under him this year that has kind of taught you something new about your game that maybe you didn't think about before?
Yeah, I think first basketball wise, he's taught me so much about thinking about the game. It's funny because he was a big man and obviously Hall of Famer at Belmont and played overseas, but he thinks the game like an elite point guard, which makes sense being the coach. But the way he understands the game, the way he uses our personnel to attack, using our strengths, um, the changes we made in concepts with ball screens and different concepts out of that. I've really learned a lot about time management, game management, and it's funny because he'll come in every few weeks with a little trivia question about, like, recently it was, if you pick the ball up near the corner or near the elbow, how do they decipher if it's going to be a inbounds on the side or underneath? And he taught us that there was a quadrant, a triangle quadrant that runs from the free throw line to the corner. It's underneath. Like it's stuff like that all the time where it's like he's just constantly learning so much about the game and sharing that knowledge with us. And it's really changed the way I see the game of basketball. It's really opened up my game in a lot of ways. But I think more importantly, and I said this, recently to some people, I think what stuck out to me the most about Coach Hedgebeth, despite him winning at every place he's been, and then doing what he's been able to do here, is just his humility and his character. He literally wants no bit of the credit. He wants no bit of the attention. But a lot of it is due to him and our staff and the way they prepare. We talk about having a championship mindset, and it starts with them, and it starts with the leaders on the team. And um, him coming in humility and never getting too high, never getting too low. He's got that same look on his face. I've really come to appreciate that in his personality. And recently, he's kind of been preaching. It's interesting I mentioned it, but having joy. Remembering why you played the game, especially this late into a season. I mean, things can get a little bit repetitive, and you're around the same guys, and for a lot of teams that can be a disaster. Fortunately, we have a lot of like-minded, high culture guys, and um, certainly makes it easier when you're winning, I'll admit. But uh, just bringing the joy, being able to laugh, being able to smile, and stay present. I think that can be really hard. I'm looking back at the last 4 or 5 years, thinking, man, we're talking about COVID. I feel like that was just yesterday, and um, man, it just flies so fast. So even now, I mean, with just a handful of regular season games left, just trying to stay present and enjoying every moment, and then maximizing our potential to do everything we want to do.
Yeah, especially when the pressure starts mounting too, it's always important to just realize it's a game at the end of the day. Like if you treat it as more than that, then you're going to tense up, you're going to start pressing, and it's not going to be a good end result. So if you keep pretending it's just a game, just putting the ball in the basket, that's all you
Yeah,
can do.
absolutely. I think you got to remember that same kid that you were playing outside, trying to imagine or counting down the clock, like losing that creativity and losing that joy. I think it's just it's very real for a lot of people. So I think remembering that is crucial, especially this time of year.
For sure. And, being a Celtics fan, I've seen a fair share of guards who've kind of been doubted and, been on the smaller side. Like Isaiah Thomas is one of my favorite players all time. Marcus Smart's up there for me, Payne Pritchard, but they're all smaller guards, but they all kind of carved out a role for themselves. So do you have any advice for guys who, especially in a game where, you're seeing guys like Victor Wembanyama, Porzingis, all these guys are like 7 foot doing stuff that guards do sometimes. Do you have any advice for how to just carve out a role for yourself, even if you're not 7'5" or 6'10", whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think unfortunately my potential to become Victor Wembanyama has probably passed me at this stage of my life. I do have the Peyton Pritchard haircut, so hopefully I can channel some of that energy. But uh, yeah, I think that's a great question, and one I'm sure a lot of kids are wondering. I was always told if you're having trouble getting on the floor, especially at the middle school, high school, JV level, right? Like think about like staying in elite shape. Like I said, like you're more valuable than a way more skilled player if you can play just like your normal self longer than he can, right? I I, I mean, I think Vince Lombardi said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." Right? You're just not the same player. I think that's a huge skill and a huge strength that doesn't get talked about enough. I think being able to shoot the ball, being able to handle the ball, being that guy that just hustles his tail off, like where coach has to say, it's late game. Like he's our best ball handler. I got to have him out there. Like he's our best shooter. I got to have him on the floor. Um, so doing everything to maximize your skills while also working on your strengths, right? That'll carve out a spot for you, right? But unfortunately, it's all too simple, and it's going to take more discipline than it is easy to talk about. And that's what separates the guys like Peyton Pritchard from a lot of others, right? I mean, there's a good amount of 6'1" guys in the country, but not many are playing for the Celtics and are counted on to be in the rotation. So, um, like I said, it's pretty simple to get better at basketball. The more you shoot, the better you're going to be. Um, I always joke and say it takes a semi pumped up ball and a semi flat surface, and you're going to get better. Like there's really not a crazy quadratic formula to it, but it's a discipline that separates people.
For sure, for sure. And, I'm sure not everything has been sunshine and rainbows for you throughout your career. So was there a point in time that really tested you? Like, I know we talked about COVID, but specifically on the court, was there a time where you got really tested and were like, maybe I'm just not built for this? Maybe I
Absolutely.
want to quit.
Yeah, no, that same thought was in my mind. I think junior year maybe. Um, I decided to come back and give it one more shot, and it was just still kind of up and down. And I'd play and I'd play well, and then I would lose some minutes, and it was really hard because, and I think you said everything happens for a reason. I'll take it a step further. Coming out of high school and then everything being derailed by COVID, and even still, like a lot of it's on my part. Like I wasn't ready to be a collegiate level basketball player. There's so much I had to learn, and so many things I need to get better at, understanding the game and getting stronger. Honestly, um, but all that being almost stripped away from me, taken away from me, it really made me step back and contemplate, where was I placing my identity? Where was I placing my security, my comfort? And honestly, it showed me that I was placing in how I performed, right? Um, Being a believer, I know that my identity is in who God says I am and what He's done for me, who He's made me to be, and sharing His love here. But um, that really taught me so much about myself. And then moving forward, like I said, just finding that joy again and saying, you know what, I have 2 years left. Like, I'm not going to let the end of the story be any result of me not putting in the most amount of work, especially in the off season. I'm not going to be outworked, and I'm going to do all the little things. So when I look back in a few years, I say, well, maybe if it didn't, result the way I wanted to, but uh, I did everything I could, and it wasn't, fault to not being disciplined enough, or not doing enough. And I think that's where, real regret comes for a lot of players. But yeah, there are certainly some hard times. And like I said, when you're in the valley and then you can see from the mountain, where you were, I think there's a lot of reward in that. But it was certainly very tough at times. It has not been all sunshine and rainbows, as you said.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, just being grateful for everything too. I feel like that allows you to be more of a there's a light at the end of the tunnel rather than I'm stuck in a tunnel. Like just
Absolutely.
constantly keeping that positive outlook.
Yeah, I think Coach Acuff always said it can't storm forever, right? The sun's going to
Right.
come out at some point. So um, he always said while we were there, work while you wait. So I thought, I'm not ready right now, but I still have time and I can still get better while I wait, and I can celebrate my teammates, and I can be happy, and I can pour into this culture and be selfless. And then when I'm ready to be a rotation guy, whether it was at Lipscomb or wherever it was going to be, I didn't know at the time. Then I was going to be ready, and I was going to be able to do it in a way that benefited my team and benefited, our success and our culture in a similar manner.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then speaking of getting tested, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the game that you were involved in the Gulf South Conference tournament semifinals last year that went to not one, not two, but five overtime periods against Lee. And I have to say, one overtime, in my ball, not to toot my own horn, but we did go to a double overtime game once, and that was just frustrating being on the sidelines. But I can't imagine. I think you played 60 minutes in that game. What was that experience like? And especially since you got the win. So what was that experience like? And how'd you keep going? Because I feel like that again, that's another time where you're like, I want to quit. I'm so tired. I don't want to go through another overtime period. So how'd you get through that?
Yeah, I think it was probably a testament to our culture and realizing that you're playing for the guys to the left and the right of you and not just yourself. And um, I guess thinking about the tradition of the program and the guys that have laid the groundwork for us to be able to do what we do, um, probably played a part of it. But admittedly, it was mostly adrenaline and the excitement of a big game and Lee's a rival, and um, all those things probably just combining to make for a great story. And I don't think it'd be quite as fond if we had lost that. To have played pretty much a game and a half and to come away with a loss would be a hard pill to swallow. But it's certainly a fond memory that I'll enjoy, with some of my best friends. But uh, and then I guess we finished really late. There wasn't a lot of celebration because guys were just gassed, and it was like we got to play in like 8 hours or whatever it was. So um, it was a crazy time and a great experience for sure.
Right. It kind of reminds me, I think there's like that UConn Syracuse game from a while back that was like similar, where it's just like guys just kept hitting shots. It kept going more and more. So, I mean, kudos to you for being able to just eke that out.
Yeah, that was it was bizarre for sure, but I think you always dream of making a shot like that or being in a game like that. helping your team win and whatever they asked me, and it happened to be making the shot. So um, it was a weird play too. I think the ball got deflected once or twice, and just kind of rolled to me. So very fortunate. Sports can be somewhat silly when you look at them, thinking if that ball deflects off a different finger and goes the opposite direction, we're not talking about it. And it was a really sad night. So
Right, right. And then now just diving into your education a little bit. So I know you're pursuing your MBA right now at UAH, and I was wondering what made you want to continue your education and what's the end goal with that, you think? I know dreams can change, so obviously today can be a different story than tomorrow.
yeah, absolutely. I think having the opportunity to complete a master's, and I finished my undergrads 2 semesters ago in general business, and I'll get an MBA now. So just an unbelievable opportunity. Very very rare. So I wanted to take every advantage of the resources I have right now, and um, I think just my parents and others around me, help shape that part of me that education, having that degree, whether people like it or not, is going to expand your potential in the future and open a lot of doors for you. So, I could have just, taken a few classes and not pursued it, but I thought it'd be worthwhile in the long run and be a good long-term investment for me and my future and whatever it is I end up doing professionally.
For sure, for sure. And then just diving a little bit more into you off the court, I know you're engaged heavily in volunteering around the Huntsville community. So how'd you get started in that, and what does it mean to you to be able to be such a positive role model for kids or anybody else in the Huntsville area when they see somebody who's so prominent like you giving back?
Yeah, I think it's really important and something I've been very proud and fortunate to be a part of a team that wants to do things like that. Starting 2 years ago, my first year, we were lining up to do things, and at Christmas time we were building beds for less fortunate that didn't have any, and different things like that, and doing camps and not just doing camps, but actually applying yourself and learning kids' names and giving high fives and connecting. I remember as a kid looking up to my dad was a coach at the time, and looking at his players and really looking up to him and how the smallest little comment from them may have just like changed my whole week, my whole day. And I think you really never know what someone's going through and how one comment can change things for them. So yeah, I think especially my church, Church of the Highlands, opportunity to do a lot of things, and I've been very blessed. I have a lot of resources. To be stingy and to not give back and to not be the hands and feet of Jesus would be foolish. So it's important, but it speaks to the a testament to our guys and our culture and the heart of this program.
And you never know how small of a deed like will make that big of a difference in somebody's life. There's certainly things in my life where like somebody's done something for me, and and I still have really fond memories of that, even if it's just like as simple as receiving a dollar bill for something like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have no idea. So yeah, it's very important.
And then, so now just diving back into, we touched on it a little bit before, but digging back into the season you guys are having right now. It's coming up to conference tournament soon, but then, so I was wondering, has there been any sort of mentality switch? I know we've talked a lot about mentality so far, but has there been a specific mentality switch from last year to this year?
I don't know if there's a direct mentality shift. I think we have 7 or 8 seniors, whatever it is, which is pretty bizarre. Um, and I think we're all rotation guys. So um, there's probably a little bit of a kick in the tail, a little bit of urgency, thinking, man, this is our last shot. Um, I came to UH partly because I wanted to win a championship, and I didn't get to do that last year. So um, some of these guys are spoiled. They've been here multiple years and they've won a ton. So like I just want one. But yeah, I think we're really hungry, and we came back with that goal in mind. And just been a unified buy-in, a unified vision, and a unified pursuit of a common goal. I think it's really been amazing. It's up in one of our coaches' offices. It says it's amazing what can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. I think everyone's kind of just laid aside their selfish desires and said, no, I think I'd rather be a part of something bigger than myself. And it's really been special, just a selfless group of guys that really cares about more about the win column than the stats and who does what on what given night to help us win, whether that's points, rebounds, steals, assists, um, supporting from the bench, like talking on the bench, like all of those things um, are central to being able to do something special, and everyone has a huge part in that. So um, I'm appreciative of how my teammates have handled it, and not to leave out the coaches I mentioned, like the work that they put in, their diligence and um, their preparedness. Like Coach always says, confidence comes from preparation. I think we take pride in being the most prepared team, every game we play. So that's just kind of been the approach and the mindset this year. So it's been an enjoyable year for sure.
And I feel like, and especially this time of year, we've talked where pressure starts to mount. And so, how do you and your teammates stay locked in? Where some self-doubt may start coming in, around, especially when it starts getting a little bit tighter, games start getting a little bit closer. You're playing teams multiple times now at this part of the schedule. So, how do you stay locked in? And do you have like a specific routine that you try? I know a lot of people are very superstitious. So, do you have any specific pregame routines that you're like, I have to do this every game so I get, so we can just keep playing well?
Yeah, I'm like Michael Scott. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. So there's some things that I just like to have a routine. I like to do things kind of a certain way. I don't know if it's superstition, but like I always take a nap like for a certain amount of time for the game. I typically listen to the same worship songs on the way to the gym. Just like different things. I don't know if it makes the biggest difference, but it's just a routine of feeling comfortable. Yeah, I think that's kind of my routine. But to speak to kind of the pressure of it, and I think staying joyful is really really important. um, Coach always says, and it's kind of like a running joke, but he always says a hungry dog always hunts best, which would make more sense if it was like a lion or something, so sometimes we change it. But um, yeah, I think it's easy to be content and say, well, we've done this, we just won this game, and that's great, but we really haven't accomplished anything yet that we're wanting to, and what we have our sights set on. So I think understanding that it's a process, and we've got to get better if we want to, reach the heights that we want to, and we've got to keep developing and growing. And um, yeah, I think that's an important perspective to have.
For sure, for sure. And I feel like too, around this time of year, you kind of start seeing the parody and craziness that is college basketball. Like there's a quote from one of my favorite college basketball reporters, John Rothstein, where he's like, anarchy? Nope, just college basketball. And so I feel like especially around this time where you're starting to get into tournament play, it gets even crazier. And I feel like the parody's gotten even better just the past few years. So what do you think this increased parity means for not only you as a player or college basketball as a sport, but also as a spectator?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan of the game and as a player, like the game is constantly developing. Not too long ago, people were laughing at the thought of shooting 15 threes a game, and now one guy might shoot 15 threes. Luke Burnett will shoot 15 if he wants to. Um, yeah, so I think, like you said, there's a lot of parity, and the game's constantly developing, which as a fan is really exciting, and as a player and a coach, especially a coach. I mean, Coach Hedgepeth and those guys are, I don't know how many games they're watching a day, but like they're constantly just coming with new concepts, new ideas, because it is so competitive, especially in the coaching sphere. So we're very fortunate to have that guy on our side and those guys in our corner. But um, yeah, there is some humor to it. Like it all kind of starts to look the same, and then eventually it's going to change again, and everyone's going to say, "Oh, we got to do it this way," and then someone else comes with a new idea. So it's an exciting time for the game of basketball.
Right. I feel like it opens up so many more opportunities too for some new teams to just kind of come in and start paving their own paths. It's not really the blue bloods anymore. It's just there's more and more teams that are more competitive now. So it's really awesome for the game.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan for sure, watching March Madness the last couple of years, it's like, man, this is awesome. A team like St. Peter's can go and beat Kentucky and beat Purdue. Like it's exciting, and it's probably very empowering too. I'd say as a player for sure.
And then we'll just wrap this up now with a few fun questions, rapid fire. But I was wondering, as a spectator or as a player, you could choose either one. What is your favorite basketball memory?
Favorite basketball memory, at least recently, probably at UAH, was just playing my first game here. I think it was against Barry in the Sunshine Conference, and we won by two. I didn't really play great, but it was just that knowing that I was going to be depended on, and I needed to be my best to help the team. Like uh, just that new role and that new responsibility. I was just so appreciative of it, and it was really just a shock of excitement. And I think that was, part of that journey of really coming to appreciate and enjoy the game again. As a fan, I grew up watching North Carolina. My family's North Carolina fans, and I was born there. So watching them when they won a couple natties. So March Madness, I think there's so many games I could think of where it's like watching as a kid. It's just like, yeah, I want to be in that spot. I want to take that shot. Um, for sure. There's so many that come to mind.
Yeah, I'm sure you must have been, being a UNC fan, you must have been so excited with Luke May hit that shot against Kentucky a while back.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and then I think it was before that. Yeah, it was before that where Villanova hit the game-winning shot, and I just lay there for 30 minutes, like, what do I do now? Yeah, it was rough.
The highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. That's sports for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and then also, so if you had the chance, and this could be a current player, it could be a legend player, it could be your dad in his prime. But if you could play one on one against any basketball player, who would you choose?
Yeah, playing my dad would be pretty special. I think he and all my uncles were high-level college players, and um, that would be pretty cool to see how I matched up. And um, there'd be a lot of competitiveness in that for sure. But I'd say professionally, either like a Steve Nash all time, current, I'd say probably Kyrie. Um, I think when I speak about the creativity and being an undersized guard, I think of Kyrie. I think he's maybe 6'3" or whatever, so he's not incredibly small, but his ability to finish around the rim and do things to manipulate the ball is really unbelievable, and I take so much joy in watching him. And um, truthfully, being younger, it was a lot of just like watching his clips and then taking 3 steps over to the floor and just trying to do it and thinking like, how can I get my mind to think this way, to do these things? So yeah, I think guarding him would be ridiculous, and he would squash me, but that would be fun.
I know Magic's not real, but he's a real wizard on the court. So.
Yeah, unbelievable, man.
And then we'll wrap it up with this question. So, as a student athlete, you've gotten to travel quite a bit. Do you have a favorite travel story and all the trips you've been able to take?
I think there's been things that have gone wrong. I think a lot of things have to go well from an operation standpoint for a trip to just be fluent and go well. I remember like one year at Lipscomb, we flew to South Dakota. It was like the first game of the year, maybe my junior year, and we got there and we're gonna go to the hotel and go straight to practice that night. And most of the guys kept their shoes in their check bag, and none of them were anywhere close to South Dakota. I think they went to like Atlanta or something. So it was like two guys had shoes, and it was kind of late. So I don't think we even did anything that night. It's just some crazy stories. But I think being at Lipscomb and being at UH both, and I talked about those guys that I valued so much, and um, will have my life for many many years to come. I think I just think about the laughs we've shared, and um, whether we won or we lost on those road trips, that the time that you spend together. Um, and I think like being in a room with somebody, being a roommate with somebody and changing, a lot of times as it does, you're forced to, I mean, walk in their shoes. You're forced to get outside yourself and connect with somebody, have a real conversation, which that's another conversation. But with technology and phones, like I think that's diminishing at a crazy rate. Being able to just look somebody in the face and have a real conversation and learn more about them, outside of yourself. So yeah, there's been a lot of crazy stories, but I'll always value the time that I've been able to spend with guys on the road.
Sure, for sure. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like I've learned a lot just about being grateful, the culture of joy you guys got going on at UAH right now, and just so many more things. I know we can't do justice with just this interview to learn about how awesome of a career you've had and how we'll continue, hopefully. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah, Brian, Jason, and everyone else that's behind us, I thank y'all for having me on. It was an honor. Hopefully, I said the right things to do as much justice I can to Coach Hedgepeth and the culture that we have here.
I hope you all enjoyed our interview today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever content can be found. Stay tuned for what we have in store next time on Inside the GSC.